I was doing this Tamil film. It was after a spate of rejections in Malayalam. My mother said, let's go to an astrologer. One day after he told me there's no way they'll replace you in this film, I got replaced in the film. We sat in the producer's office and he said, just look at her face. Does she look like a heroine?
After Parineeta, when you'd become the star and he wanted to cast you, was it the same producer your parents met?
Yes, it was the same producer.
Same guy. Amazing. Yeah. What a story.
I think Hey Baby, I remember people telling me it's a witch hunt. But during Hey Baby, some of the reviews didn't even mention me and I was a leading lady in the film. I think Hamari Adhuri Kahani changed my perspective though. When Bhatt called me and said, it's not doing well, I hung up the phone and I wailed like someone had died. I remember once walking from Nariman Point to Bandra just because I wanted to clear my head.
Hello and welcome to Sit with Hitlist, our completely unscripted award-winning podcast series. The guest with me today is Silk Smita, Sabrina Lal, Shakuntala Devi. These are all real-life people starting with S. And lots of other people who are actually fictional. They've all rolled up to become Vidya Balan for a conversation today. You'll be playing Vidya Balan. Thank you very much, Vidya, for coming on to our show.
Thank you. It just struck me that the three real-life characters that I've played, their names start with the letter S. It's crazy. Oh my God.
Well, it struck me. That's why I introduced you that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that struck me, Vidya, because it's important that we sort of place this conversation and literally place it. I'm presuming you are in Bandra?
Yeah, I'm in Khar.
You're in Khar, okay. Just to let you know, I am in Chembur. Chembur is a neighborhood on the northeast side of Bombay, which is actually very far away from where the movie industry is, which is roughly Andheri, Versova, that is on the northwest. And if you hang around in Chembur for long enough, you'll meet someone or the other who will tell you that this is Vidya Balan's neighborhood. So Chembur girl, I'm speaking to you from Chembur.
How amazing is that? Because, I still feel like Chembur is home, I guess, because I was born and brought up there and spent the first 31 years of my life there. So when someone says Chembur, my heart still skips a beat, And I have to say that during the lockdown, there were times when, because I still go to Chembur. I still go to the Sai Baba Mandir there. I have some relatives there. I just sometimes drive past the neighborhood and I feel like I got pangs. During the lockdown, I just wanted to just drive past and I couldn't do it. And I haven't been able to do it
Are your parents here, Vidya, in Chembur?
No, my parents live in Khar, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And I'm doing this interview out of Siddharth's office in Khar also, right, which is very close to my parents' place. But I live in Juhu.
But you were in Bandra before this? Or you've been in Juhu all through?
Actually, I've been in Juhu for the past 8 years. I was in Khar before that. Where my parents live. I used to live with them. So
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Vidya. The reason why I'm getting to this whole neighborhood thing is there's this whole conversation about insider, outsider, right? And everyone speaks of it. It's just become like this massive thing that the whole nation should concern itself with, which is a completely different matter altogether. But outsider in a real context means someone who's not from a film family and works in the movies, right? If we go beyond the whole binary of oppressors and victims, and we just look at it also as, then there's this second outsider, which is someone who comes from outside Bombay to work in the city as well, right? But I find it really strange that when you look at Bollywood as a film industry, and of course there are the outsiders who are not from the film families, there are actually not that many people who are from inside Bombay, but not from within film families. Is that something you've noticed?
You're saying the people who come from outside of the film industry are largely from outside Bombay.
Yeah. So I mean, I mean the ones who really made it. Like for instance, outside of you, Vidya, the only person I can think of in terms of a mainline top movie star would be Akshay Kumar, who I think grew up in Sion, right? And then became a star. Everyone else seems to come. Why is it that people from Bombay actually haven't broken into Bollywood? Because they have the natural advantage, right? The movie industry is right here. They don't have rents to pay.
Oh my God, it's so interesting because I'd never thought of this. As in, I'd never, it's such a valid observation. you know. But I wonder why. Maybe because I really don't think it has to do with Bombay or outside Bombay, actually. I just think it's how hard you're willing to work once you're here, once you get that break, and even how much you're willing to wait out for that break.
Right.
You know, so to me, actually, this insider outsider debate has left me a bit confused, uh, because someone was telling me the other day, but now you're an insider, and I said, how's that? You know, I still don't come from a film family. And they said, you're married to a producer. I said, but he's an outsider. He doesn't come from a film family.
I mean, he kind of does, right? Though,
No,
if I'm not mistaken, grandfather was a producer.
his grandfather was a producer, but you know, he didn't do too many films,
Right.
and he wasn't in films long enough to have any sort of influence.
Right.
You know, and then of course they skipped a generation. His father had nothing to do with films. His mother was in the fashion industry, so she was a Miss India in the
really?
60s. Yeah. And then, you know, she's done a whole lot of modeling, and she's a dancer primarily. So they're not insiders by, you know, he had to, he's also, according to me, come up the hard way in terms of, you know, he was, before UTV, he was with Star, and then he was with UTV, and then, you know, he rose up and did really well for himself before, you know, UTV became Disney, and then post Disney, he set up Roy Kapoor Films. So, yeah.
Vidya, when you are a quote unquote from the outside in terms of not from a family that's worked in the movies, is it any different for you than for someone who's come from outside Bombay? Is that world just something as distant for you as it would be for someone who's come from a small town, and there's so many of them in Bombay?
It's different for different people, right? Because if you come from a place where you have support, it may not be that tough for you here. One, financial backing. You know, so if you come from a well-off family, and if your family is supportive of your decision to join films, then you should be fine. At least you're not operating from a space of survival. A lot of people, you know, end up getting exploited or have to compromise, you know, and I'm not just talking about girls having to, you know, falling prey to the casting couch or anything. I'm generally saying that's when, you know, you're not able to probably wait it out for the right opportunity, because, you know, your survival depends on it. But if you have that family support, then it's great.
Yeah, you know what I meant was, like, for instance, what it would be to meet a movie star if you're not from Bombay, whereas if you grew up in Chembur, even while growing up, I'm sure there were things happening here that had something or the other to do with the movie industry, right? RK Studios right across my street.
Yeah.
I think Ashok Kumar had his home here. Om Prakash still has his home here, of course, no more. I think Malaika Arora also comes from Chembur, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
so
right.
did you see these guys around?
Shilpa Shetty.
Shilpa Shetty is from Chembur. Shankar Mahadevan, if I'm not mistaken, would be.
He's actually from Vashi, but yeah, Chembur, Vashi. Yeah.
Did you see these guys around? Did you like bump into them at places, maybe when you were going out?
Shilpa was 3 years my senior in school.
Okay.
So obviously I knew when she got her first big break. I didn't know her personally like that, but we were all like, wow, she's become a movie star, you know, Shilpa Shetty and all of that. It was big news. And we, of course, knew RK Studios, and the Kapoor family was from Chembur. And also, like you said, Ashok Kumar. And then I remember Lalita Pawar was from Chembur. There were quite a few people like Shankar Mahadevan. I'm forgetting a few others. But there was no interaction. There was no, I still had stars in my eyes. The first time I saw Rishi Kapoor, he was the first ever star I bumped into, and literally bumped into, because in the South Indian community, a lot of the men go to Sabrimala in January every year. And there's a lead up to that. There's a 40-day. They follow a 40-day period of abstinence. No alcohol. You're
like
vegetarian,
or something, right.
stuff like that. And there are pujas that happen every day that you can go and participate in. And it's a community thing. So a lot of times. Of course, women also would go to that, and women, children would get taken along. And I'd gone to one of those, and I heard Rishi Kapoor was going to Sabarimala that year, and that he would be coming for a puja on a Sunday. So I remember wanting to go there to see Rishi Kapoor, and I went in and I was really dejected because I didn't see him. Someone said he'd come already, blah, blah, blah. I was just walking up when dharam, I banged into him and looked up and I saw these rosy pink cheeks. And I realized it was Rishi Kapoor. He's actually the first star that I encountered.
And that was in Chembur.
Kapoor is from Chembur. Anil Kapoor is from
Anil
Chembur.
Kapoor, correct. That's right.
But that was the extent of my interaction with anyone from the film world. So yes, but there are lots of levels of being an insider and outsider.
Right.
That's what I mean. So one, you may be an outsider from outside this city. The other is you may just be an outsider to the film industry. Then I don't know what other levels there are, but I'm sure there are.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Someone who's from inside the city but outside film families, do you think their Hindi probably sucks? Because Bombay Hindi is quite bad, huh? That they would have a natural disadvantage over getting into Hindi movies because they really don't do good Hindi.
Because, in Bombay, we speak Hindi very differently.
Yeah.
It's almost, you don't even complete your sentences in Bombay. But, I beg to differ because I think I speak the language decently. Yeah, and I was born and brought up here. But I've always liked the language and I wanted to speak it well. Even before I harbored the desire to be an actor. So my neighbors were Punjabi and they would speak Hindi all the time. So my Hindi actually improved because of listening to them, hearing them speak and also speaking to them. Like my parents have that South Indian accent when they speak Hindi, but I don't. But yes, generally, I think every city has for example, if you hear the Bangaloreans speak, even English, it's very different. They have a lot of Bangalorisms in their English, So I think every city dictates how its people end up speaking.
Yeah, I was just comparing it to say someone like a Nawaz or a Nasiruddin Shah,
No,
their
because
command over Hindi.
Also, they come from the Hindi belt.
Right. Exactly.
They come from UP where they speak Hindi so beautifully. They also speak Urdu there. So, obviously there is a difference.
Yeah. I'm just comparing, say, Cyrus Brocha to, Nawaz. Their Hindi are going to be very different. Right?
Of course.
So here's the thing.
Equally charming.
Of course, absolutely. The last time we spoke, Vidya, I don't know if you remember, our entire conversation was in Hindi.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
And we did it at that
at a place
restaurant.
in Bandra.
Yeah.
Right? So, and this conversation is entirely in English. My question to you is, do you, and it's a question very pertinent to you and not to too many people, do you change as a person depending on the language in terms of how you express yourself? Does that happen? Because you actually speak a lot of languages, unlike most people I know. I think you speak Hindi, English, Bengali, Tamil. Do you speak Malayalam as well?
No, just a smattering.
You can.
And a little bit of Marathi.
It's a little bit of Marathi.
I get confused in the grammar between Hindi and Marathi. So the Marathi grammar goes for a toss. But I speak a little bit of Marathi also.
Do you change as a person when you are depending on the language?
Yeah, most definitely. Because you're more fluent in one language than you are in the other.
Right.
So, your thoughts flow more easily. Like if I'm doing it in English or Hindi, I'm absolutely fine. But when they ask me to do interviews in Bengali because they know I speak Bengali, then, suddenly, because I'm trying to form the sentences.
You're translating in your head.
Yeah, then it's a bit, the interview begins to stagger. I stutter and I stumble and all of that. Of
Which language do you think in?
I think in English, but interestingly, when I'm on set, I think in Hindi.
Oh, you do?
I think it's just because I act in Hindi. So I just think, like when I was doing a Telugu film, I did two
NTR
Telugu films,
biopic.
NTR,
Right.
the NTR biopic. And, I realized that I was actually translating it in Hindi and then intonating it. So I realized that Hindi is my acting language.
Your professional language, essentially.
Yes.
Right?
No,
Which
when you ask me to perform, it'll probably most naturally, it won't happen to me naturally in English. It'll happen to me naturally in Hindi.
Interesting you say that. I notice a lot of Hindi actors, when they perform in English, they suddenly become very British in the way they speak. Something very fake about it, although their English otherwise is as good as anybody else's, right?
That's also an issue I found with English language theatre. I haven't watched English language theatre in a really long time. But I have to say that when I did, I thought it was really alienating.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you're hearing your own people speak in an alien tongue. The accent is so it's
British.
and disconcerting, And then I saw that in some television, and when actors speak English in Indian films, it's a bit. But I think we're veering towards the natural now. Like I saw Bandish Bandits, and I thought they did the English very well. So natural. It was like any of us speak English.
That was the last show. That's a big show on Amazon Prime that just released recently. I think the last time I spoke to you, Vidya, was when Mission Mangal had released.
That's right.
And it had a massive opening, 30 crore. The last time we saw you on screen was, of course, Shakuntala Devi. That's been, and now I'm like doing a little time setting here, where we are right now, for people who watch it much later, this particular interview. And here's the thing. I saw you really jubilant, as you should have been, with the incredible success of Mission Mangal. You could tell, I think it was about a week after the release of the film.
Yeah.
How do things change when the movies don't go to the theater and come to an OTT platform instead? For instance, now it's been 13 days, if I'm not mistaken, since Shakuntala Devi. Day one, everyone's talking about it. Day two, everyone's talking about it. Do you think it doesn't have that longer tail as against a movie in a theater?
To the contrary, because there are still people watching it, and there are people watching it repeatedly, and there are people messaging me repeatedly. But also there are first-time viewers who've probably not seen it in these past 2 weeks, who are now watching it. So even today I'm getting messages. So I think probably here it would be you would get a more sustained reaction from audiences, because they can watch it when they please.
Right.
In the safety and comfort of their
maybe I'm just looking at it from a media perspective in terms of the buzz that you see on social media, right? So there's a buzz on day one, day two, and suddenly, because there's so much content, everyone's talking about Bandish Bandits, and then they're all talking about Gunjan Saxena, but it just came out 12 days ago, which is Shakuntala Devi. Maybe it's a social media thing, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Because, also, reviews happen on the weekend. And then Monday onwards, normally it's the figures that get spoken about. But here there are no figures to speak about. So I guess that's why there's probably, in that sense, less of a buzz. But I'm not feeling that drop in buzz. And, generally people on our team are still very excited about the reactions, because we're all still getting messages, which is actually different from how it is when it releases in the theater.
Right. It becomes all about the numbers thereafter, you say.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does.
Were you curious
people are still giving you reactions to, I cried. I absolutely loved how you all did the match shows. You were Shakuntala Devi all the way. I didn't see you anywhere. Those kind of reactions.
Were you curious to find out how many people viewed the film, either on day one or in general? You could ask Amazon, they tell you, right?
No, I didn't ask them, because I figured before the film that it's their policy not to share numbers. Right. So I didn't want to be asking them what is not
But in
the
terms of
rigor.
a buzz, does it feel like as much of a hit in terms of the number, the kind of responses you got for Mission Mangal? Because that was your biggest hit ever, if I'm not mistaken,
Of
right?
course, absolutely. In terms of reactions to the film, I have to say it's as much as for Mission Mangal, if not more.
Hmm. Interesting.
Also
Right.
because here, it's about a real person.
Hmm.
They're also watching the film and then Googling her, people who are not familiar with her. Even
Right.
people who are familiar with her are doing that, and then they're also writing to me saying, I saw this show and this was in the film, right? And then all sorts of things, that,
Sure.
now I can see you've got her mannerisms. So there's something to go back to. So I think people are also fascinated by the fact that she was a real person. See, Mission Mangal was based on a real life, on a real
Incident.
person,
Right.
but you didn't know who that was. Also, it was not just one person. The personal life was fictionalized.
But here's the thing, Vidya, speaking of the person, and I'm just going to take a few reactions that came right after the release. One reaction was from some people who had met Shakuntala Devi, and they felt that while she was funny and all those things, in real life, she was actually not a boisterous person. Is that something that you came across even during your research?
Not at all.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, whoever I've spoken to has said she was boisterous, she was flamboyant, she had a wicked sense of humor, she laughed loudly. I guess also maybe these people, probably met her.
Were close to her, perhaps.
No, or maybe, met her at a time when she was not very boisterous for whatever reason. Maybe she was going through something. Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
But, because we've got our information also from her daughter. Her daughter and son-in-law have shared
Right.
very generously with us about her life. And, of course, we had access to videos and we've read articles about her. So, I don't think it would be possible to satisfy everyone's perception of her.
Right.
But we were telling the story through the eyes of the daughter, and this is how she saw her mother.
That's another thing that came up. I don't know, Vidya, if you got a chance to read Devdutt Patnaik, this phenomenal writer and mythologist.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so I mean, I wish I'd sent you that piece that he wrote, but essentially his point was, and this has to do with the book that Shakuntala Devi wrote,
Right.
in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, that was seen as an extremely progressive book on homosexuals that she wrote, which at the time was a huge taboo. And his thing is, he's writing from a perspective of, is it too much the daughter's story? Because because she did say at the time that her husband was homosexual, that she was married to, and then it was not a marriage that lasted for too long. They're separated or divorced, if I'm not mistaken. And that in the film thereafter, because it's the daughter's perspective, they say no, that was a complete lie. It was not true. And that's something that the daughter may want as the truth, because but from Devdutt's perspective, he's saying that you're bringing back the taboo and the stigma attached to the community, which was certainly true then. It should not be true now.
No, not at all. But there was no truth to it. Not because it's being told from the point of view of the daughter, but you know how it panned out apparently, that she was being asked, what gives you the right to write about homosexuality? And people were questioning her credibility to write on the subject. So they said, how can you be an authority on the subject? And finally, therefore, in one of her, in a typically Shakuntala moment, she said, that's because my ex-husband was homosexual. But very clearly, apparently, her husband wasn't a homosexual. And this is obviously, I don't think there's any taboo here.
Right.
There was this, she said it and then she realized that, then people accepted her book. So she let that just be.
Right.
She was also a very impulsive person. She could be petulant and she could be, I think there was, if I may say so, there was some stress between them because of the divorce they'd been through and all of that. So, of course, it's being told through the point of view of the daughter, but this is the truth. So it's not wanting to tiptoe around the issue or, wanting to deflect it. I don't think I for one would not be comfortable doing that. And honestly, Shakuntala Devi's daughter has been very, very transparent in talking about her mother. Why would she do the same with her father? There are lots of uncomfortable truths. Even in acknowledging that her mother said this, it's not easy to talk about, the fact that your mother just said this on a whim. But I think she's been very, very honest. And there's, I don't think there's any, wanting to shove things under the carpet or anything of the sort. Not at
Talking
all.
about the film, Vidya, no, I get your point. I mean, that was her perspective, and that's what she knew to be the truth of the situation, and that's what you guys went with. But the film itself, and well, of course, congratulations, a lovely film. We all enjoyed it, as we already mentioned in the past. There is something very Vidya Balan about this film, to a point that one can call it a genre of its own, like a Vidya Balan feminist movie.
Wow, really?
Why I say that? And of course, there's like 3 films back to back. One is Tumhari Sulu, and then you did Mission Mangal, and then this one where you see, while it's a feminist film in the sense of arguing for equality of opportunity for men and women, the men are not douches in the movie. In fact, they come across as even better than what normal people will be. Is that something that you look out for in a script or ask to be incorporated? Because it seems like a trend now. These guys are like way too good.
No, but here, of course, that's how Paritosh was and that's how Ajay is. So I don't think we could have changed that, because these are real people. But the men in my life have been absolutely, they've just accepted me and the women around me for who they are. So which is where that comes from, I feel. I think that's my worldview. I feel that I know of a world where men can be very accepting of women as they are. I've always said that, Siddharth is one of those people who never said, don't laugh so loudly, because I know I have a really loud laugh. And I have encountered people in the past who said, oh my God, just tone that down. And when they said tone that down, I've just walked away. But, Siddharth just lets me be just as much as I let him be. So I think I tend to veer towards people that I've seen either directly in my life or around me. My father, when it came to his daughters, extremely encouraging.
You ever had a jerk boyfriend in your life?
Yeah.
You have, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like rite of passage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I feel that it's literally a rite of passage. It's unless you go through, I'm trying not to use harsh, rude words, but you have to sift through life to get the real deal.
The other aspect, and just last thing on Shakuntala Devi, is, a lot of people believe, because there was a certain aspect to her life in terms of professionally, which wasn't touched upon enough, because is the astrology or the numerological aspect of her existence, which was where she would have all these people over and she'd tell them what's going to happen to their life. And, and a lot of people believe that she was making like a total asses out of them, Is that something that you guys chose not to explore? Because people who are not believers will say, what is this? Like, buy this and buy it from her and your life will become something.
No, but I'm sure there are lots of people who can't even get their heads around how she did what she did. That complex mathematical equations in record time. It is unfathomable. But she was, apparently, I know lots of people who've gone to her for astrological consultations, and there are believers in astrology and there are those that don't. But I don't think that, it was guided by what people might like or might not like. It's a 2-hour film, and we wanted to definitely focus on the maths, which is what got her the worldwide recognition. Right. The politics and the astrology and all of that came much later in her life. So, I think we needed to get the core right. Now, also, Mayank, this is exactly the film we set out to make, right? And we are very happy and proud that we made it exactly the way we wanted to make it, or tell the story exactly the way we wanted to. That people will have various opinions, especially because it's a real person. And I respect that. But then it would have been a different film. This is a film we chose to make.
The reason I'm asking you is, do you believe in astrology yourself
No, I don't.
at all?
Only because I think what happens is, the positive doesn't stick. The negative sticks. Then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I remember I went to someone who told me I was doing this Tamil film. It was after a spate of rejections in Malayalam. And I had begun to feel after the first schedule, because I was also scared. I'd been replaced in so many films. After the first schedule, I had a dirty feeling, So I told my parents about it, and my mother said, let's go to an astrologer. I was against it, but we still went. And that person told me, there's no way they'll replace you in this film. And guess what? One day after he told me there's no way they'll replace you in this film, I got replaced in the film. So I feel that, what has to happen will happen. You have to just deal with it.
I mean, the reason why I'm asking you this is because if one were to see your career graph, right, it almost looks like, although it's a phenomenal career, but graph-wise, it almost looks like an ECG diagram, right? You go like zoom up, then come down, then zoom up, and again, isn't it? And it's when you have a life like that is when most people start believing astrology, right? कि मेरा समय अभी अच्छा चल रहा है, अभी समय नहीं चल रहा अच्छा, right?
Yeah. But I'm not superstitious at all. I don't. I understand. I'm given to believe that astrology and numerology are sciences, but I don't subscribe to them. So because I want to just lead my life, make my decisions instinctively, and see how they play out. Some will work out, some won't. But what happens, like I told you, this, I found that maybe he was just not a good astrologer, this gentleman I went to. But I think there's no point in preempting. I was holding on to the fact that he said, oh, you're not going to get thrown out of the film. You're not going to get replaced. But I did get replaced, So I'd rather listen to my heart than listen to what someone else has to say. I've heard so many people say that the astrologer said, 6 mahine baad tumhara bahut acha time. So for 6 months, they don't do anything. Waiting for time to change. Time doesn't change. It's you who has to work towards it. That's my belief.
But in terms of you and your rejections, and there's a well-known story everyone talks about. I mean, it's an incredible story to begin with. Since we have a place setting and a time setting, and you're the protagonist, let's do a slight documentary on you. And if you were to look at it from a documentary perspective, what I would find fascinating about you, Vidya, if you were making this film right now, is incredible footage that we would have, which nobody's seen before. For instance, the first time that you worked on television, and you did the entire series that nobody's seen, and you're in it. It's your debut, isn't it?
Yeah. It's my debut. It was a show called Labelas, and it was being made for a channel that had, I think, commissioned some 15, 20 shows. And guess what? It just didn't materialize.
They didn't take off? Like they didn't launch at all?
They didn't take off. I don't know what
channel was this?
BITV?
Okay.
Yeah. So I think they wanted it to be a paid for channel. And at that time, I don't think anyone was willing to pay for, cable channels, because cable TV was very new.
Right.
And then I think some of these shows got syndicated to some other channels, but they even rebranded Lavelas, but it just didn't.
Is that footage lying there somewhere? Is it there somewhere in a
I don't
digibeta
know.
or somewhere?
I should actually ask someone, if there's any footage available anywhere, because it's, I don't think it got seen. I think it it did air on one channel which shut down. So that show was just, I think, I don't know.
And so your first film too, Vidya, would be with Mohanlal. Again, you would have shot for the first schedule. I'm sure there is footage of that first film of yours too.
Yeah, I'm sure there is footage. And that, I know that footage was seen by a whole lot of people, which is why I got offered 7, 8 Malayalam films after that with some of the biggest directors. And then, these were all on call. They tell me the story and then they'd say, okay, this is what we'll fix the remuneration at. And there was no contract or anything. And therefore, then I got replaced in each one of them. My mom would know from the Malayalam magazines. That was a crazy period, 2000 to 2003. It was like everything I touched turned to dust. It was crazy. I remember once walking from Nariman Point to Bandra just because I wanted to clear my head. It was scorching, it was hot as hell, but it was like, in films you see this, the protagonist just walks and walks or runs and literally that happened to me because I couldn't make sense. I'd signed 2 films. At this time I had signed 2 films with K. Balchandar, who made Ek Duje Ke Liye. And I was to leave sometime in Feb. And there was no news. We were to shoot the film in New Zealand. So I thought they'd ask for my passport or whatever, 3 weeks to the shoot, and they hadn't. So we called them, and then, initially they were ducking our calls. And then finally my mom picked up the phone and called his daughter and said, what's happening? And she said, I'm really sorry to inform you, but we've decided to go with an established actor. And I remember it was that day that I walked. I just left home. I told my mom, I just need some. I took a cab, went to Nariman Point, and I sat there for a while and then just started walking and walked back to Bandra.
But for the viewers, that's about 25 kilometers minimum, right? Nariman to Bandra would be minimum 25 kilometers.
Really?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Okay.
But that's the Tamil part, right? That's the Tamil films that you're supposed to do.
The K. Balchandar films were Tamil. Plus, there were 2 other Tamil films. One from which, after the first schedule, I got replaced. And I remember the producer, again, I did 1 schedule and then the second schedule, I heard that they had replaced me. So when I called the producer, he was sounding really wishy-washy. So my parents, poor parents of mine, what all they've been through, they actually flew with me to Chennai. We sat in the producer's office and he said, just look at her face. Does she look like a heroine? Mayank, for 6 months after that, I won't look into the mirror. And and then there was another Tamil film which I left because I felt it was a sex comedy and that was not something I'd signed up for. And they ended up suing me at the age of 22. It was like...
But if you were to look at, like, say, a dramatic point in that documentary film that we're putting together right now, would it be the point where there was a Tamil producer, if I'm not mistaken, who was making a film with Kamal Hassan, and this is after Parineeta, when you'd become the star, and he wanted to cast you, and you said, nope. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. So I met him at the airport and he said to me, he said, hello, do you remember me? I'm not going to name him. God bless him. So I said, yes, I remember you. He said, congratulations, I saw Lagi Raho Munna Bhai. And he said, we wanted to approach you for a film. I said, sure, speak to my manager. And I gave him my manager's number. When I came back home and I just said it to my parents, my father felt a great sense of vindication. I think because they felt, you feel so protective of your child, and I think they felt humiliated for me. They just felt like, oh my God, poor child, how much rejection is she going to face? And so bravely. I remember my father's colleague telling me, he said, I believe you pray a lot. Just tell God enough is enough. And I said, but I don't feel that. He said, what are you made of? And I said, I don't know. I still have faith that things will work out. I think because, honestly, Mayank, my parents have brought us up to believe that this world is a fair place, that the universe has your back. So even when things take time, it's because something bigger and better is in store. I think that has seen me through a lot.
Was it the same producer your parents met?
Yes, it was the same producer.
Same guy. Amazing. Yeah. What a story.
No, but having said that, Kamal Hassan then called me for the film. And I love Kamal Hassan. So but the only reason I couldn't do the film, or rather, he required 6 months of my time, and I just started my career here. I couldn't afford 6 months. I didn't
What
do
about
it.
your ups and downs here in Bombay, Vidya? Like, of course, a great beginning, and then a few really great films that everyone watched. I'm not saying any of those films were not great. The ones that didn't work. I mean, there are too many other things that
Yeah,
happen
yeah, of
in any
course.
case, right? And then you go like twing at some point. Which was that turning point after your debut? Where it's just like nosedive?
I think Kismet Connection.
Hmm.
I think Hey Baby, it almost, I remember people telling me it's a witch hunt. And, I was like, what? I don't believe in these things.
Hmm.
You know, it's, I feel I'm too inconsequential for someone to plan a witch hunt. But whatever it is, at one point I did feel like my weight and my dressing sense had become a national issue. I also think because I don't know if it's different for the so-called insiders, but there was no one to tell me that, listen, today's newspapers, tomorrow's toilet paper, so don't take it so seriously, and you're the flavor of the season. And not a very pleasant flavor, but it's okay. The season will change.
Right.
I didn't have anyone to tell me that my parents were also getting affected, especially my mother, because she was feeling like, I guess, again, you feel so, it's like, okay, now she's got what she wants and she's doing so well, and suddenly everything she seems to do gets criticized, or everything she does seems to get criticized. So I remember there was that phase when I was also, not getting the kind of work I wanted to be doing. At one point, I thought maybe my career so far had been a fluke, and that, because I was not really good in these films like Hey Baby and Kismet Connection, like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I remember during Hey Baby, some of the reviews didn't even mention me, and I was the leading lady in the film. Okay, that's also sexism at its very best. But having said that, I just felt really invisible, and I told myself, I said, maybe the party is over. But then, I'm so grateful that my family has always been so supportive, and I had hour-long conversations with them, hours of conversations with them, months of conversations with them, and that brought perspective because I spent a lot of time at home.
I mean, I remember there's this one video which again keeps getting circulated of you being at the Filmfare Award, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Shahrukh is the anchor, or I forget who the anchor was, and they're giving you like the award for the worst dressed person for that film, and it's not like you choose your costume for a movie anyway, and you look really visibly pissed. Were you pissed, or you knew that it was part of the act anyway?
No. So the thing is that I had been told that I'm going to be given this award.
Okay.
That they're the equivalent of your
that golden raspberry.
Yeah,
Razzies,
raspberry awards.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I'm a sport. So I said, fine. But when I went there and I realized that it was, there were a couple of other contenders, but very clearly they said they couldn't give it to them.
Oh.
That's when I felt cheated. That's when I felt angry. I felt like if you're just giving it to me, give it to me. No, but you're telling me that, but we can't give it to so and so. Because, they'll get, people around her will get pissed. I thought, now that is a clear case of, I don't know, what is it called? Nepotism. So I was angry about that. And then I still accepted it, and it was okay. But the next day, I think it spiraled out of control. There were so many people who were angry on my behalf, people I didn't know who kept telling me, this is wrong, you can't keep quiet. And, that's when I realized that, oh, really, is it that big a deal? Because I'd gotten over my anger by the next day. But it's okay. Here I am.
Absolutely. I mean, you are where you are because of stuff that you've done, the choices you made. I'm sure you have your own story, which is unique to you, of nepotism or whatever it is that you call it, but it's still your unique story, right? There's no larger...
Yeah, Mayank, I have to tell you this, that, it hadn't even struck me until you asked me that this is a glaring case of nepotism that I experienced personally. You know, because I've never even seen it through that prism. I just feel like, okay, thankfully I'd never lost an opportunity because of anyone from a film family or anything. And the lost opportunities are, you know, I don't see opportunities that don't materialize as lost opportunities. Like I told you, I always feel something bigger and better was in store for me. But for the first time, I actually realized that this is what it was.
Like right now, you just
Yeah,
thought
right
about it.
now,
That
during
was
this interview.
nepotism.
Yes, that was nepotism, for
Okay,
sure.
we're going to talk a little bit about you as an actor, your process as an actor. Is there something like, and of course, I don't want to go to the complete masterclass route, and hope we do it someday because that's like that'll take some time. But as a performer over years, is there something that you've established as a process that you keep in mind from film to film, because you have roles which are totally different, separate from each other each time? Is there something that you keep in mind?
I instinctively veer towards something that I haven't done before, I think, because I tend to get bored very easily, you know. So I think at that point, maybe I'm conscious. No, I'm not even conscious. Like I'm saying, it just happens, and then I realize that, oh, this is completely different from what I've done. But I'm not a trained actor. I don't have a method or anything. So I think it varies from film to film. Of course, I have a certain process where I spend a lot of time with the director. It's also because I feel film is a director's medium, no? So you have to completely buy into the vision, and we don't have the luxury of discussing stuff on set because our films are very tightly budgeted, and you have a lot of work to accomplish in a day. So I like to do my homework beforehand.
But when you say you're not a trained actor, and a lot of trained actors tend to say this, is the fact that it becomes very easy for them to get in and get out of character because they're trained to be that person
Yeah.
as a craftsperson. Does that ever happen to you, Vidya, where in certain roles, perhaps because you're not trained, to get out of it was a little harder than usual?
Yeah, I think so. Initially it would take a toll on me. I remember when I was doing the dirty picture, I fell horribly sick. And I remember Nasir Saab sending me a beautiful message which said, uh, leave the character back on set and go home. And I was like, he said, because to retain, I'm just giving you, I'm not quoting him, but this is a sum and substance of what he said. Basically, that's how you can preserve your health. And I didn't know how to do it initially, but I think I've gotten better at it for sure. Previously, if I did an emotion scene, I'd feel drained at the end of it. I still feel drained, but I know how to reclaim myself, how to just restore my energies. I think that also happens with maturity, with experience. You learn to do it.
The other thing I hear about you, that there are situations in shoots where you just get into a laughing fit and you just will not stop.
Yeah.
That's happened to you a lot of times.
Oh, you don't want to know the number of times I found it so difficult on Ishqiya, on Shadi Ke Side Effects, on I think Bobby Jasoos. So many films, Tumhari Sulu. There are times when Kahani, I start laughing and then I just can't stop. I don't know what it is. It's like I've had laughing gas or something. But thankfully, again, that's also gotten better. Like I can't remember having a laughing fit on Mission Mangal or on Shakuntala. Maybe a couple of takes, but on those films, Salame-Ishq, I took 25 takes for one scene.
Which scene?
So John and I were together in the scene, and basically he gets a call from someone calling Ghansham Kirane Wala Dukan, and it's a wrong number. So every time he picks up, he'd say, "Ye Ghansham Kirane Wala nahi hai," or something like that. And the moment he'd say that, I'd start laughing. Then after a while, we had to look at each other, right? But after a while, I started looking at his ear just to avoid eye contact. But I just couldn't do it. It was crazy. 25 takes.
You've had that in emotional scenes as well? Like you just wouldn't stop because you found something funny or your thought in your head?
Yeah, a fight scene between Farhan and me and Shadi Ke Side Effects. And it happened beautifully, okay? And then from the corner of it was his close-up. Now we'd done the master and it was his close-up. And after that, from in the corner of my eye, I can see someone scratching his
Private parts.
Yeah, and I couldn't stop laughing. And then it was my close-up, so I botched up that close-up because I kept laughing. Finally, somehow managed it, but I remember it was, oh, Ghanchakkar, so much we laughed. So I've gotten better, but.
Was Ghanchakkar again like a turning point for you in terms of a nosedive all over again in your career? Would you say that?
Yeah, I think, it was a nosedive also because, okay, that film did work, but I think after 5 successes, I think I was in denial that it hadn't worked. I was like, I thought this is going to last forever and ever. Now I know it doesn't. And that's the beauty of life. But at that time, I was like, I've just delivered 5 back-to-back hits and I'm being called, all sorts of things. And suddenly now, all sorts of things positively.
Yeah.
And suddenly now.
The fourth Khan and all.
Yeah. And the Shiro and God knows what else. And suddenly then when it didn't work, I think I didn't want to accept it. I kept thinking, oh, Wednesday ko picture फिर से pick up होगी.
Right.
वो Wednesday कभी आई ही नहीं.
And how did you get out of that situation in the sense of what is it? At what point did you realize that, man, that's not how it works?
No, I realized that I was focusing too much on the numbers and that what I do gives me a great deal of joy. I'm grateful on a daily basis for the fact that I'm living my dream, the only dream I ever had, to be an actor. And then I had somewhere lost that, Now suddenly it became about maintaining this success, about getting the big numbers. And the more, after Ghanchakkar, Shaadi Ke Side Effects happened, then Bobby Jasoos happened, which was, it's done the worst business amongst all my films. And I think...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's bizarre. It's a really nice film.
Yeah, but thank you. But it just didn't do well. It also opened on Ramzan, as in on the first day of Ramzan. So people didn't go to theaters. And, otherwise also I think it was the rains, a whole lot of, I don't know. Right. People say all sorts of things, but I think the film just didn't work, unfortunately. And then Hamari Adhuri Kahani, my God. I think Hamari Adhuri Kahani changed my perspective though. Because when I remember on that Sunday morning, on that weekend, when Bhatt Saab called me and said, it's not doing well, I hung up the phone and I wailed like someone had died. I remember it was raining, it was pouring. And Siddharth told me, come, I'll take you for a drive. And he drove straight to the Sai Baba Mandir in Chembur, where I used to go to every single day of my life while I was in Chembur. And he's not a believer, but he still took me there. And I just went there and I was like, oh, you cry when I was out of breath. I just cried and cried and cried, but I cried and I came out. And I felt like, I knew something needed to change. And that's what changed. I realized that I'd begun to focus too much on the numbers, that had taken the joy away. So I was like, I enjoy what I do. The rest, I'll do my best and leave the rest to the audience and forget about opening numbers, opening day, opening weekend, lifetime and all. Then I stopped.
Was that a film, Vidya, that you actually spoke to Mahesh Bhatt and said, why don't you write a script for me after you watched Ashiki 2?
I watched Ashiki 2 and I called Bhatt Saab and I called Mohit Suri. I loved the film. So I just called them and I said, and I told Bhatt Saab, I said, I'd love to work with Mohit Suri. And knowing Bhatt Saab, he said, I actually have a story that is waiting to be told. And he wrote this and he got Mohit to direct it. I think, something, I don't think Mohit and I really, if we didn't gel together as actor and director.
Did you like the movie yourself as a dispassionate audience? Or is it even possible to be dispassionate as an audience?
No, because, I'll tell you what, I watched it once when it wasn't fully ready with BGM and all that. and I haven't watched it since. And once the film didn't do well, I didn't feel like watching it, so I haven't watched it.
What perfume were you wearing for that particular character? Do you remember?
No.
The reason I'm asking you is for viewers to know that with each character you change your perfume, and that becomes a perfume for that particular part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what were you wearing for Shakuntala Devi, for instance?
For Shakuntala Devi, I wore Dior Spice Blend because I feel like she's a she's a blend of spices. No, I can't remember. Maybe I should make a note of the perfumes I use.
You should. I recently met an actor, Vidya, and she was telling me about how a very accomplished actor, she was telling me about how she has a playlist for every role that she's played.
Wow.
So there's some music that gets her into that mood. And I was just telling her, if you just put that out on Spotify, that this is the playlist for every role you played, what an amazing thing it would be to listen to that playlist, right?
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that with music?
No, not really. Not really. But I know lots of people, lots of directors actually, more than actors, who have a playlist for films. So this is very interesting as an actor. Maybe I'll try it the next time.
You know, you should try, because I think that's the last thing we're going to focus on is your relationship with music. I think it's an area that I feel is underexplored for a bunch of reasons. Because one, if I'm not mistaken, this you've said quite a few times before in your interviews about how you decided to become an actor because you watched Ek Do Teen. Madhuri performed to Ek Do Teen.
Yeah.
So it's music actually that sort of drew you into, and that is more performance in terms of dance rather than acting. Of course, there's a lot of acting in Madhuri's dances as well.
Yeah.
But what I found intriguing thereafter, and I have great respect for Chembur, and you grew up here, but my respect for Chembur grew even further, is that you were crushing on Satyajit Ray at that age.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the two? And how do you crush on, I mean...
there used to be this magazine, The Illustrated Weekly, and I got familiar with Satyajit Ray's work through that, because we used to subscribe to that, and I read about him. This was just before he was honored with the Oscar,
right, the Lifetime Achievement.
Yeah. So, I read about him and I was fascinated about his take on relationships and just how, I read about Pothe Panchali, and then I ended up watching a few films, and I just felt like, oh my God, I want to work with this man. By then I had already wanted to, I was in class 7, I think, when I decided I wanted to be an actor.
Like, you remember like exactly when you decided to be an actor, like class 7, there's like a moment?
No, not class. Actually, I was 8 years old. Sorry, so it can't be class 7. No, it was 1987 was Cesar. So I was 8 years old. So I was in class 3. Right. But I think, in class 3. But I think after that, no one took me seriously until probably class 7, when I started feeling like, no, this is what I want to do. I think I started watching films also from the perspective of performance. My sister would point out things to me and say, see, it's how you use your eyes, how you use your voice. And I remember she explaining the difference between art and commercial cinema to me in those days. And
how much older is your sister?
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Her name's Priya, and she's always been my hero. So, I would just like soak up all that she was saying. And so I think that's how I had a crush on Satyajit Ray. I wrote him a letter, but I could never post it because he passed away before that.
The other thing to do with music, and this is an amazing story that I watched this show called Times of Music. I don't know if you've got a chance to see. It's a lovely show where composers jam together and they do versions of each other's songs. And there was one in which Shantanu Moitra was there. Yeah. And Shantanu Moitra was talking about how Parineeta happened to you, and that you were at a concert and that you got a call. You were watching a show, and that's when you got a call from Vidhu Vinod Chopra. Yeah. Now, he said, I think you should correct him, because he said Bryan Adams' concert, and then I did my little homework, and then it turned out to be Enrique Iglesias' concert.
I think, and I think he made 2 mistakes there. He told me about it. One was that I did 75 tests. He used that as a metaphor, but people took it literally, because I didn't do even 25 tests. But all sorts of numbers have done the rounds.
He said 76, if I'm not. Yeah, 75 or something.
Yeah.
He said, yeah.
So he said, I just meant it as 75 tests. But anyway, it was, I think people took it literally. And the other was a Brian Adams concert. It was an Enrique concert. And, you know, it was, I had the hugest crush on Enrique. And I had just reached the stage. I wanted to take my mind off all this. Enrique had come into town. And I went with this friend of mine who used to be Dada's assistant. And I told him, I said, I'll go up to stage. You have to just pick me up and let me touch Enrique's hand once, you know. I thought maybe he'll pull me up. There'll be something dramatic. And that's when Vidya Chopra called me. And I was so angry. I was like, anyway, he's going to tell me that, listen, it's not quite working out. So, you know, all the best for your future. So he called me and I said, can I call you back? And he said, no. I said, I'm at a concert. There are 20,000 people. I'm near the stage. He said, you walk out, I'll wait. I was so annoyed because
they told you like an hour later, no?
Yeah, exactly. No, but I'm so glad he did because it changed my life. So I walked out thinking, you know, almost cursing him under my breath, saying, you know, why does ye murge ko halal karne se pehle khilate hain? And it's like that, saying, okay, go all the way out. And what for? I kept thinking. But when I went out, I was panting and I said, yes, because I'd half run, half walked. And I said, yes, Mr. Chopra. And he said, you are my Parineeta. And for a few seconds, I don't think it registered. And then tap, I started crying. My friend thought that I hadn't got it. So he's like, it's okay, calm down. It'll all be good. And then I put the phone down. And I told him, I said, you know what? Guess what? I actually got it. And Hero was playing inside. So it was like magic moment.
So what was taking that long? And also if I'm not mistaken, for all the time that you spent auditioning for the part again and again over months, Seth was also was also like giving you cues all through. Is that true?
No, we did one test together. They wanted to see us both together.
Right.
You know, so there were 2 tests. We shot together for 2 days. One was where it was a contemporary love story. It was a modern version of Parineeta. And one was where it was a period story. So we were dressed accordingly and we did 2 scenes together. And that was it. I think because, you know, our chemistry was very crucial. They wanted to see how we looked together and stuff.
Was Aishwarya supposed to be the main, like the first contender for that part? Is that true?
You know, I think they were hoping, I think Vinod Chopra definitely wanted Aishwarya Rai to be in the film because he was putting in a lot of money and I was a newcomer and the film was called Parineeta, for God's sake. So I think he thought it would be a safer bet. But Dada had written it with me in mind, you know. So I think, so he was like, just why don't you audition this girl and then if she doesn't work out, because he'd been mentoring me with the promise that he'll make a film with me. And then, you know, when it came to it, he was, I think, feeling very guilty also. They might cast such a big star.
Right.
But thankfully, it happened for me.
Because you've been working with him for over a period of time, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, at least 3, going back to music, 3 music videos. Shubha
3
Mangal,
music videos and a whole lot
Euphoria.
of ads. Yeah, and Pankaj Udas.
Pankaj Udas, yes.
So yes, I did 3 music videos with him and a whole lot of ads. So, and then I assisted him for a few months.
You mean in the ad films, were you assisting him?
Yeah, I was. As a matter of fact, Rani Mukherjee was in one of those ads, I remember.
Which ad is that? Do you remember?
It was for Fanta.
Okay.
We were shooting at Banganga. And, you know, Dada kept telling me, no, you go and stand under the umbrella, otherwise you'll tan. Because it was so hot. And I kept telling Dada, I can't be your assistant like this, you know, please. But I think I was the most ineffective AD. I don't think I learned anything on the job because I was really, everyone around me was being really protective. They were indulging I just wanted to know about filmmaking and all. I didn't learn anything because everyone knew that Dada was mentoring me or preparing me for the film. So, you know, they were all really careful around me.
But it's a pretty cool thing for Pradeep Sarkar to find the talent and then to stick by. I don't think people really do that in the movies, right? They're too happy to have the movie made in the first place under any circumstance.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful to him for that. There was a time when I remember before my last test on Parineeta, I finally went to him and said, Dada, whatever happens, this is also your first film.
Mm.
So just make it with or without me, because tomorrow we'll know the decision. And he said, Tu kya keh rahi hai? His wife was also there. And he looked at her and said, just tell her something. And I said, no, I'm just telling you this hand on heart. I want you to make the film. Of course, I want to be a part of it. But if not this, then maybe you'll have a success and you'll be able to cast me in the next.
Right.
But I ran out of there and I bawled, Mayank, because I was like, I so badly wanted this film. And, for a first film, an author-backed role, a title role, and with Dada, who I knew would take care of me like I was porcelain. I knew he would bring out the best in me. Dada came into my life at a point when I didn't have faith in myself after all the rejection.
Right.
So, I really, but I think I also by that stage, I was like, if it's not working out, forget it, Let's just.
How did you and Dada meet? Did you meet at a ad film or?
Yeah. So I did an ad film with him. I used to go to various auditions, and I got called to his office for an audition, and I tested and I got through. So I did an ad film with him, and then there was no news for a few months. I remember meeting one of his assistants and telling her, listen, but you all used to do music videos, huh? Call me for an audition. And she said, it's been 2 years, we've not done a music video. I was like, oh, I was heartbroken. But guess what? The next music video they did, even though that girl was no longer with the company, they ended up calling me. That was for Euphoria's Kabhi Aana Tu Meri Gali. So,
which is quite iconic, huh? That video. Like now, like it's like 90s cool, and of course, though it was little later, wasn't it? It's like early 2000, late 90s.
Early 2000.
Early 2000s, right?
2003 to be precise.
Right. This is before your Bengali film that you did, which would be your debut.
Yes, exactly.
And Parineeta, of course, became iconic. But you know what? Quickly, Vidya, there are other things that have happened in your career, and there is no end to how much we can talk about each film. But I'm just going to touch upon a few iconic moments, and I'm going to ask you if there is a story that you can remember from them, right? For instance, the one thing that you'll always be known for the rest of your life now is that line, entertainment.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life. I mean, do you remember when you read this line or what did happen right there?
No, actually, I didn't think it would become such an iconic line. There were other lines that I thought could become iconic, and they did. But this line, I just said it. It was done. Who knew that for the rest of my life, whichever event I went to, my introduction would happen through this line. These are things, I guess. But Rajat Arora is a fantastic dialogue writer. So there are quite a few lines in that film that have stayed with me.
Is there any moment from the film that stayed with you in terms of something that you particularly enjoyed in terms of performance per se from Dirty Picture? Was it hard? Was it easy?
It was tough. It was tough as hell. Because, she was someone who we're very different people. There were very few similarities that I could find between her and me. And it was tough because, one, she was using her body brazenly, and I'm someone who's always been very shy of my body because I grew up a fat girl. So that's something I've always been conscious of. And here I had to be completely like free. And I had to wear clothes that I'd never imagined wearing in my life. I had to smoke, I had to drink, it was crazy. I think it took, the first time I smoked, we did this scene, the silk coffee scene between Imran and me. We're in the cafe and I say, do silk coffee lana. Basically to show him that, listen, this has been my territory. And that obviously, we should have they should have gotten me a lighter cigarette. I didn't know much about cigarettes, but they got me one of those old style brown filters. And by the end of the scene, I had smoked 10, 15 cigarettes, I think. Even if not full, but you know, within a span of like 2-3 hours, I got such a terrible acidity attack, and then I wanted to puke and my head was hurting. And so we had lots of instances like that. Also because Miller had a very clear vision of how he wanted me to look, because he wanted to grade that, you know, the rise and the fall. He was very particular. So the number of costume trials we did on that film, and then the makeup trials. So sometimes I remember one night we finished shoot at 2 o'clock, and then at 2:45 we were doing a costume trial. 2:45 a.m. So it was a very tough film.
Was Kahani equally tough?
No, Kahani wasn't tough at all, because I'd been part of the writing process in the sense that every scene that he wrote, he'd share with me.
Okay.
So I knew the story. I knew the ins and outs, so to speak. You know, I knew her mind. I knew her well before I went on set. So it was actually, Kahani was probably one of the easiest shoots. Tough in terms of a lot of guerrilla shooting and all that, right. Real locations. But just in terms of playing the character, it wasn't tough.
Speaking of iconic moments, then there is that other line that's become huge, of course, is from Ishqiya, where he says, where these two men are fighting over you, they want to kill. Well, I mean, Arshad's character has to kill you, and this is Tumhara ishq or mera ishq sex.
Yeah.
Were you there in that shot? Were you physically present when this line happens?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, they're at the door debating whether to shoot me or who should shoot me, and you know, and so I obviously heard them in the master. When they did the close-ups, I wasn't there. Right. But you know, when you're working with actors like Nasiruddin Shah and Arshad Warsi, some lines, some moments, actually so many, you know, are just so magical. Like, I would be amazed at how Arshad, like, mouths a lot of lines, like throwaway lines. And that was the beauty of his delivery. You know, it never sounded like a dialogue. It sounded like it came out of his head. Of course, a lot of it did, because he improvises all the time. But, you know, the way he says that, na, and the exchange between them, it said, when you see that shot, so much has been conveyed there.
You doing Pa, and what the first time you saw Amitabh Bachchan look like Oro? That would have been a moment of its own.
Yeah, and you know, I remember until then I was chewing Balki's brains, saying, you know, I need a reading with Mr. Bachchan. How am I going to be his mother? Mother and son have to have like a very physically comfortable relationship also. I can't just hit him on the head and say something, because, you know, normally you do that with a child, or you just instinctively pull the child's cheek, or, you know, just, I can't do that. He's Amitabh Bachchan. So finally, I think if we were shooting from Monday, I think around Friday, Balki called me and said, can you come to Mr. Bachchan's house? I'm doing a look test today, and we can do a reading after the look test. But we'll do some pictures also that we can use in the house. I said, okay. So I went there, got into costume. Abhishek also got into costume. We did some pictures, and we were waiting for Mr. Bachchan to emerge from the makeup room. When he came out of that room, it was sheer magic. I didn't see Amitabh Bachchan. I saw 13-year-old Oro. And you know, then he came and he stood with us and we did pictures. And something happened. I'm still feeling that something, you know. And after the pictures, I told Balki, I don't need a reading. I just didn't need a reading anymore. I knew, you know, I wasn't playing mother to Amitabh Bachchan anymore. I was playing mother to Oro.
Are there moments like these during the making of a film, Vidya, where you realize you've got it, you've got the tone, or you've got the sur, as they call it in Desi filmy language? You've just got it, like now you know this person. Is there always a moment, or is it before, is it after, is it sometimes during?
Sometimes it's before. And at other times it's hopefully during, because if it's after, then it's too late.
Yeah. No, what I meant was after it started, which means during. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it invariably, in the first 2-3 days, it tends to happen. And when it doesn't, then you know that something's off. But it's
Has that
rarely,
happened?
not in the longest time, not that I can remember. No.
Or are you going to be just politically correct because that's a movie
No.
you worked on?
No. It's not happened.
Last
Thankfully.
question, and because we were talking about music and your relationship with music, and I'm going to just like to see if it's possible, I just throw it out there. You also are a trained singer. And
I
would
can't
like
hear
to-
you suddenly.
Is there a song that you'd like to hum for us as a bye-bye gift?
Oh God, which song should I sing?
Something, everyone has that song that they sing when they're asked to sing, usually. If they're singers, that is.
I always sing Piyu Bole because it's the easiest song. Should I sing that for you? Oh my God. Piyu Bole, Piya Bole, kya ye bole jano na, jiya dole, hole hole, kyun ye dole jano na.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Thank
As
you.
a return gift, is there any uncle, aunt of yours I can drop off some stuff in Chembur in case you want?
Just say hi to Chembur for me.
I
Send
will
me
do
a
that.
whiff of Chembur.
We'll do that. Thank you so much, Vidya Balan.
Thank you.
This was a complete pleasure, and hope to see you soon. And take care in these times of COVID.
I will. You too. Take care and stay safe. God
Thank
bless.
you.
Thank you, Mayank.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Subscribe to Midday India. Get direct notifications on all our videos by clicking on the bell icon.